Right. So the setup ramps you walk down the elevation. That's right. It's a it's drop.
We'll call a meeting to order of the Utilities Committee, Monday, February 6th, 2023. Let's please stand if you're able for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Thank you. Please let the record show that all three members of the Utility Committee, myself, Councilperson Avig, and Councilperson Winkle are present. In addition, Council members Jacobs, DeVries, Swank, and Avens are present. The Mayor is present, as is the Safety Service Director, Law Director, Assistant Corporate Counsel, Director of Public Utilities, and the City Engineer. Did I miss anyone? A lot of people for the meeting. Welcome. Tonight we have under new business T-175-2022, an ordinance amending Ridgeville Codified Ordinance Section 1044.0 to connection charges by adding subsection L. And at this point, I'll turn over the meeting to Councilmember Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked about this last time a bit. So what we're doing here is locking in the tap-in fees based upon when the construction of the project started. So it wouldn't continue escalating if there was it would flow into another year. That would allow someone who has to get this done to budget properly and get the money together, because it's a significant cost to do so. In the red writing, the revision, after talking to other council members and administration, we had a little bit of language. So retroactive to January 1st, 2022 with a bit of language. So we put a hard date on it. Also, we tried to define what commencement meant. So we decided to add language for construction commencement. So planning and permitting wouldn't have anything to do with it. It would be when, more or less shovels are in the ground. That would be when commencement would be considered. Other than that, this is something I think is fair. It helps people in our community, and it does not hurt the city at the same time. And that's the gist of it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
I have a comment. I'm just concerned about the people that would choose not to tap in at the time they were able to, and maybe prolong it over years. I don't know if that's a concern in terms of cost going up for them to tap in.
The costs go up every year, because as you know, most costs do. There is a public health issue here in most instances, and the health department requires you to tap in not too long after the sewer becomes available. But there have been instances where people ignore that, and the health department's not always quick to enforce that law. So you could have years go by before somebody taps in. As a matter of fact, I met with a business owner on Sugar Ridge it was a few weeks ago, who originally came to the city in 2019 and got a price and did not tap in at that time. And here it is now, 2023, and he's arguing about the cost. And I said, if you had done this in 2019, the cost would have been a lot cheaper. We have the papers in front of us, and he's asking for a reduced cost, which would have been maybe the 2019 price. And so, he was looking to basically get a reduced price because he ignored his obligation. I don't know that that's fair. And I know that there's been instances that things have gone on even longer than that. So, how's that fair to everybody else who meets their obligations on time?
Is there at the time that a resident taps in, That's their contractor, that's their costs, but we charge a tap-in fee, correct?
Correct.
And is the tap-in fee based upon our costs at the time of the tap-in?
Yes.
So in this instance, the city would not be recouping all of the costs?
Correct. You know, for example, French Creek raises its rates. One of the components of that fee is a French Creek fee. You know, that French Creek's costs, it's tough for 3 words to string together, go up every year for a variety of reasons. And so that's just one component of the many that are on that bill. So I think that would be challenging. Yeah, so there is technically lost revenue. But as a bigger picture, you know, you're looking at a subset of the, you know, of the population that in this case, we're asking to benefit. You know, when, for example, the city has been building new houses for years, you know, why wouldn't they get, you know, a break? And, you know, it's just, I don't know, there's no like financial component to this, like just because you have a septic system doesn't mean, you know, that you can't afford one. If you've been discharging raw sewage because your septic system isn't working, well, you know, you should tap into the sewer system immediately because you're harming the public by letting your raw sewage get, you know, outside of your system. So there's a cost to replacing your septic system. And I don't know what that cost is, but there's definitely a significant cost to replacing one that's now out of service. And we've been bringing sewers into areas over the years where in large numbers that has been the case. Dennis, you probably were on council. Do you remember when Gene Kleinholz brought
Yes, I did.
jars and put them on the table?
Correct.
I mean, that's because of septic systems that have failed throughout the city. And that's where, you know, we've come up with these sanitary sewer projects to alleviate those health hazards that are being created by those failing systems. So, you know, I mean, when we talk about the emergency clause, we always talk about the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Health being the first one of those 3 things. I mean, nothing's more important than that.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'd like to, if I could please address some of the concerns. This is written, is not going to include businesses. This doesn't have to, if you're a business to make money, this is talking about single family dwellings where people live with their families. This is not going to affect the business. This also doesn't include the French Creek fee. That doesn't change. This is our tap-in fees, the city's charging. So French Creek fee is not changing here. There's 4 components to a tap-in fee, 2 of which go to the city, 1 goes to French Creek, and 1 is permitting fees that go to the building department. French Creek and the permitting fees for the building department are not part of this. So it's just the tap-in fees the cities are charging. The construction of a sanitary sewer, if someone was built in 2019, then you know that's how much it costs us in 2019 to build that sanitary sewer. A tap-in is done by a contractor that the owner hires and taps into the sewer. So when I say this doesn't hurt the city, I mean our tap-in fees are based on a year of construction of sanitary sewer. So the health department is going to make you tap into this. I know that may be as diligent as you'd like to be, but they will. And from what I understand, that you can stretch it out to 2 years and you're going to go to court. From what I understand, I know that Christina mentioned last meeting, there's a few exceptions to that with distances and whatnot. So we're not talking about if years and years are going by, it's not something we've created. Probably would be the health department, the county that's not enforcing this. I'm not suggesting by any means we don't tap into these sanitary sewers. It is for the health and safety and well-being of the community that we do so. I'm not suggesting at all. What this does is just ties their fee that they're already paying, which is already significant, to the year that it was constructed. So I think this year was about 60, it's like $6,000 some odd to tap in. That's just 2 of the fees. That doesn't include French Creek, does not include permits. So $60 some $100, and then, you know, I think we projected to go up another $400 some in 23, something along those lines, and give you rough numbers. So they would be tied into the years, instead of $6,900, for instance, if you take it $6,500, they're still paying a lot of money to tap into these sewers. It's just tied to the year that's constructed.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
I have a question.
Yeah.
With regards to Stony Ridge, where there's houses that face Stony Ridge and you've got all the subdivisions behind that. The septic systems on Stony Ridge are working. At this point, there's no opportunity to have the health department step in. What charge do those residents get charged when in fact there's failure of their septic system at the time that the subdivision behind them going in? At the time that it actually comes down Stony Ridge?
I would say when sanitary sewers available to them. Right? So it's not, there's a subdivision going behind there, doesn't necessarily mean they have sanitary they can tap into, right? Because it's not brought out to them.
Well, there's one resident that actually paid for the sanitary sewer hook in at this place, and actually they put a manhole there. I'd hate to have us be in a situation where you can't manage that down the road. I'm talking about the one home at Hampton Place that actually put the manhole in. They tied in, but the other 4 or 5 houses did not.
We didn't have access to it.
No, they didn't.
So when access becomes available, then construction's commenced in that year, whatever that was made available, then
That's what I
then you're tied in.
But it's
right?
not tied into 2022 or 2021.
The year that construction commenced on it, so whatever year this gets put in, all the way to the future, that's the year when it becomes available to you. That'd be the year it's tied to.
Okay.
And then, new homes, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I get jumped in.
Please, go ahead.
New homes too, I wouldn't say I necessarily feel bad for someone to build a new home to make money to build a home. This is a cost is coming, right? An existing home here that maybe your sewers, maybe you're saying, maybe your septic system's good, maybe it's not, whatever your conditions of your home are. This is for existing people that have lived here for years, or however many years they've lived here, that they're already established. This is the reason for it. If you're building homes to make money here, I think that's a cost you're going to include into building your home.
Any other questions from members of the committee? I just had a couple questions. The city then has the wherewithal to know when the construction project occurred and how much to charge these residents when they do go to tap in.
I mean, so when if you remember the Center Ridge Road sanitary sewer extension project, that went a lot longer than it originally was planned. In that case, it did not go over a particular year. So, but it's a tracking thing. And so, you're asking somebody to track the people who have not tapped in. What year, did the project happen in front of their house? And we're just gonna hold that price down for the rest of time until they do. The health department doesn't come after them and take them to court in 2 years. We know there's a reluctance on the part of the health department to do that. And so they try to avoid that, at all costs. And it's the county that winds up prosecuting, not the health department. So then you have to get the county prosecutor to be involved. There's been years where somebody hasn't tapped in and they still haven't, and the county has not taken them to court. But, this is, I get the idea, and I understand, the reasoning behind it. One of the challenges that we have, and I asked Brian to look into this, we have made legislation retroactive before, but it's always been in the same year that we've been introducing legislation. We've never asked to go back. So in this particular case now, we're looking back, 14 months? We're trying to go back 14 months. We're in a different calendar year. I don't know. I only asked him about an hour ago to look into that. So I don't know if he has any answers on that just yet, but
I do.
okay.
Please,
Don't
go
forget,
ahead.
okay. normally, if this was just something that was gonna take effect, you know, and then go from the effective date forward, then it's just really a policy decision for you guys to decide. But when there's gonna be any kind of retroactivity to the ordinance or any type of legislation, well, then you have legal issues. And one is generally they're prohibited. You've got to specifically, you know, put down and make sure that it's clear in the language that it's retroactive. Secondly, then you have to look at what is the nature of the type of ordinance. And if it's going to affect an existing right or an existing procedure that somebody has already accrued a right, or in this case, you know, their tap-in fees that have already been paid, well, then you're going to have some problems legally. There could be legal challenges to it. But I think the biggest challenge would be because due process still is involved and it's got to be equally applied. I mean, how would you be able to go back and say, well, these people should be able to get it, but these people, you know, will have this rate and these people would have a different rate. I mean, that is going to be an issue, I think. So like I said, if this was prospective in nature, no, it's a policy decision for, you know, the group. But if it's retroactive, I do think that there are some legal issues.
Yes.
So this was introduced in 22 and the rates were locked in at 22. So the only thing that would have been different would be anything that happened in this January. So we're not changing anything that happened in 22.
Well, being introduced to being passed in 22 are two different things.
But I guess the other point is we're not actually changing anything that happened in 22.
Well, you would be changing the rates that they would be paying from 23 to 22. Or even,
It would be changed basically as of January 1st of 23 to lock it into 22. 22 still is what it is. Right?
That's what you're trying to do. Brian just said that he doesn't think that that's legal.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'm pretty sure we've already transacted a 2023 fee, so there's that. I also just wanted to point out that there are 4 costs in our tap-in permit. 2 of those that Cliff had mentioned, the trunk sewer and water. For 2023, that did equal $6,752. But if you want to look at as an example, the Center Ridge Road sanitary sewer project cost us $1.8 million. And if you divide that into the 60 service laterals that we provided, it's $30,000 a month. So we're still paying 75% of the cost. So it's really just a small share that they're contributing to the overall cost. So we're maintaining that cost for years.
Okay, and so right now, we're looking at, again, subject to the legality of it, retroactive till January 1 of 2022. So all you would have to keep, not all, but you would need to be able to keep track of the rates beginning in January 1, 2022. So that in 2026, when someone taps in and the project happened in 2022, they're going to get charged what we were charging in 2022. That's what I'm following. But we have to keep track of that somehow. And again, does the city have the wherewithal to do that?
And the city has to incur those additional fees, right? That would, I mean, wouldn't there be additional fees that would not be picked up by the resident if they didn't tap in right away?
Well, right now, there is no enforcement. You know, we haven't been charging a penalty if that's what they're asking.
Well, I'm asking if they don't tap in like right away when it's available and they wait 4 years, isn't there additional costs that would be incurred by the city?
What we have typically done is charge them the current year's rate.
Correct.
That's the hardship that we do. It's not they're paying the current rate.
But I believe the question is between 2022 and 2026, are there costs that the city actually incurs that goes towards that tap-in fee that if this legislation passed, we would not receive?
Well, I guess we haven't been taking the benefit of the fund to use for future improvements, so.
Okay.
Up substantially under the show.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Questions or comments from any of the council members?
Richard,
Yes.
can we possibly put in the legislation that you have 1 year in the time of the meeting?
Well, I don't remember the health department role, but isn't it 2 years?
It's 2 years.
The health department requires.
So what they do is they send a letter, so we'll send the initial letter out after the acceptance of the improvements. And then the health department tells them they have 6 months to at least get their contractor on board. So then they give them another 6 months to complete the work. And then they look it over in a year to decide if there's still any outstanding.
Yes.
items.
What you're gonna find in which we have other areas in the city that do not have sewers, their septic systems are not working. So as soon as spring comes, the smell will come up. We'll send the guys out, we're gonna have to clean out the ditches because it's got septic in them. And the health department, as the mayor said, as Kevin said, that they're not gonna, they really don't do anything. It goes to the county doesn't want to do anything because they got too many people. It's a wheel that you don't want to get on.
And Holly, for us to change the time frame, we don't enforce it. It's the county that enforces it. So through the county prosecutor on behalf of the health department. So I don't know that us changing the time frame would be valuable or not.
Because we wouldn't have control over it.
Right.
Any other questions or comments from council members?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I guess I'm still a bit confused here. As far as I'm concerned, I think we need to put a expiration of that within our legislation. As far as I'm concerned, our expiration has nothing to do with what the health department. We're saying, if you don't take advantage of this basically right away, and within 1 year, 90 days, whatever it happens to be, you are now going to be paying whatever the new fee is. And I don't think that's really tied into what the health department's doing. That's just tying into our own finances.
Maybe there's more language, I'm sorry, to the chair. There has to be more language here than that's the case.
That's correct. And I'm thinking that we should put in some type of an expiration of the offer. Because I can think of a resident within my ward who had just put in a new septic system. And basically we let him slide by for 2 years. Now, whether he ever hooked in or not, I don't know. But it's a matter of, as you said, I could see folks dragging this out for years. And quite frankly, if you've been paying attention at all to EPA and all this, you know sewers are coming. And it could be a year down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever it happens to be, they're coming because, like I know in Cuyahoga County, they're under mandate. Everybody's going to be hooked into it. I don't know if that mandate is in Lorraine County or not.
Elyria just entered into an agreement with the EPA. They have to pay $250 million because they have violated this sewer discharge into the river or lake 1,100 or 1,200 times in the last like 6 years or something like that. So, you know, it's a problem. And so you saw it first. I think Lorraine was the first one to go down. They had to build that giant tunnel. And then Lakewood entered into agreement. And then like the next week, it was Elyria entering into their agreement. We're talking big money, you know, for this stuff. And,
Yeah.
you know, when people complain about rates going up, I'd hate to see what $250 million would do to the rate. Wouldn't want to be that guy.
I lived in Cleveland up until 2009, and sewer rates there were going through the roof. Sewer was more expensive than water.
Yeah.
And so it is coming. And I know a particular area in my ward again, where I know the septics are failing. Because after a rain in the springtime, I got a complaint about it. They were blaming something else, but it wasn't anything but failing septics. Their septic systems are failing. Septic systems are designed for about 30 years. And then after that, we need to replace them. Last time I knew, and I'm sorry, my information goes back a few years, you're looking at about $30,000 for the septic system. And
Well, through the chair, then in that case, if there's sewers available, or there are no sewers available.
one person I'm talking about, it was available. It came through and he had replaced his septic system about a year before the sewers came through.
Well, they were prior to the sewers coming.
Pardon me?
It was prior to the sewers.
Yeah, yeah.
At that point, then he wouldn't, because he has a septic system, they weren't available at that point, so Cliff's legislation would work.
I understand, but we delayed, my understanding is we delayed his tie-in for a couple of years. Now, whether he tied in or not, I can't tell you. But I'm just saying that there should be it shouldn't be a forever thing that somebody delayed it for 5 years. Sorry, I don't think we should be honoring that for that 5-6 years.
Well, I've deferred to Christina, and I think if your septic system is working, you do have a length of time, but there has to be a failure in order for you absolutely have to tie in. Is that correct?
If you have a new system, I'm not sure what they constitute the last year, the last 2 years, I don't know. I think you get 7 years.
And again, something like that, I don't think we should be honoring this deal.
I do want to give, we only have a few minutes. I want to give the public, if there's anyone in the public who wants to make a comment. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Rudy Ringwald, 31966 Center Ridge Road here in Ridgeville. I just want to commend Cliff for at least trying to do something. And part of the problem is when the letters were sent out and that these tapping fees were not made clear as to how much they're going to be. And they are significant. They're almost $10,000. And Ridgeville is the highest around. Nobody else is even close to $10,000, I don't think. I think some of the suggestions you've made will make it work. I agree. You can't have it forever, but I think it's something that at least you can help out the folks because it is a big bite.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, your name and address for the record.
Carol Malone, 31883 Center Ridge Road, North Ridgeville. I want to commend Cliff also for basically what he's trying to do. The question I had when we first started, was the fact that he sent a letter out asking everybody where they wanted to have it tapped, whether they wanted on the being Center Ridge going east and west, whether you wanted on the east end of your property, or west end of your property, or the center. It would have been nice at that point in time to let everybody know what the tap fee was going to be. That never occurred. When I called in and asked about that, they said a letter will be coming out later, and the letter never did arrive. And basically, as the mayor stated, I believe that the project was supposed to end sometime around about the middle of June. That didn't happen. I think Ridgeville accepted it somewhere about the middle of October.
Sure.
When the letter came out telling everybody that all of a sudden, if you didn't pay your tap fee yet within a couple months, that it was going to go up in the year 2023. Okay. My question today is I can understand it going up and build a new home. Okay, because you've got to cut back into the main trunk line. But those trunk lines were already set up when the sewer was put in, your vertical was already up. So basically at that point in time, I couldn't see why, since we got a letter in October, middle of October, why it would increase if you didn't pay it before the end of December of 2022. I think it's only fair to the people basically in the future to let them know what their tap fees are going to be so they can be prepared. And you are correct. If you have a brand new septic system, it is 30 grand for a new system, and it is good for 7 years. Okay, before you actually have to tap it, unless they have a failure somewhere before the failure comes up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the audience?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to table this.
Okay, we have a motion with the committee to table it from Mr. Winkle.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to table this till the next meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
All opposed, motion carries. There being no other business before the committee, the meeting is adjourned.